لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
Before I was a Muslim, my position on Muslims was pretty neutral, at least with regards to the faith itself. I didn't have anything against Islam itself. The thing is that my Islamophobia came out of ignorance. When I thought of Muslims, I thought of the traditional Middle Eastern guy with a big thick beard living in a clay house with no electricity. I thought, when I saw them on the media, I saw people rioting, I saw people threatening to blow up the world. I thought that Muslims were backwards. But the more I learned about Islam itself, the more I actually looked into the faith, the more I realized that I was stereotyping an entire religion based on a few cultural aspects even. And it all changed actually the night that I became a Muslim. So a little bit of backstory here. I actually learned about Islam through my girlfriend at the time who was working for a Muslim. So she would learn about Islam, then she would relay it back to me. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that it was something that I had believed in my whole life. I had faith, I believed in God, I believed in Jesus, but I never actually had any sort of solid foundation to base my faith on. And Islam gave me that. So, the night I became a Muslim, I and my girlfriend were invited to her boss's place for dinner. And I thought, okay, we're going, what are you doing with the lights, man? Okay. So, I went to dinner at her boss's place, and I was thinking, okay, I'm in a Muslim household, there's Quran verses on the wall, women are running around in hijabs. I'm probably going to have something exotic. It's probably going to be goat or curry. Maybe crickets might even be on the menu. Who knows? We had lasagna instead. Lasagna, the least Middle Eastern dish you can think of, probably next to poutine. And it was then that I realized that Muslims are just people like everyone else. They have their own likes and dislikes. They're not saddled with this traditional Middle Eastern stereotype that we put on them. Muslims come in all colors, shapes, and sizes. And so it's this racial stereotype that still sticks with Muslims today. And when I tell people I'm a Muslim, I mean, there's always this sudden shocked reaction. It's like, what? But you're white. Then I've had people ask me, where's your turban? Other ones I've had people ask, Islam, isn't that just a religion for black people? And also, you don't look Middle Eastern, why are you a Muslim? But if you take a walk through any crowd of people here in Edmonton, odds are you've brushed past Muslims and you didn't even know it. They're not all, dressed in traditional Middle Eastern garb. People just like me or just like Mahmoud or Tamur. I mean, if you were to walk down the street, you probably wouldn't think that they were Muslims just by looking at them. Except maybe Tamur. But the thing is that it's this unity that we have with our differences that makes this religion so beautiful. Is that God says in the Quran that our differences in our color and in our languages is a blessing from Him. And it's something that I didn't realize until I became a Muslim. And so, the other thing too is that when I did become a Muslim, I chose to keep my name. I chose to keep my name Aaron. Because I believe our name is part of our identity. And I don't believe that we have to change our identity to be Middle Eastern for us to be a Muslim. I can be Aaron. I can be this white Canadian guy who likes Star Wars, playing video games, eating lasagna, and I can still be a Muslim. So that's my story. So, on to tonight's subject. Tonight's subject is Shariah. It's become a bit of a buzzword in the media these days. People seem to equate it with fascism. You see media headlines about how Muslims are trying to overthrow our judicial courts and install Sharia instead. So, but the fact is that Sharia is a living part of every Muslim's life. The word Sharia, when you translate it from Arabic to English, it literally means a clear trodden path to a source of water. And since water is a source of life, Sharia is a living part of every Muslim's life. For example, Sharia teaches us the correct ways to perform our faith, such as our daily prayers, our giving to charity, our fasting, but it also includes daily, everyday things such as etiquette, even how we do business, even washing our hands before we eat is part of Shariah. And so to give us more insight into Shariah, I'd like to call up tonight's speaker, Sheikh Harith Alsayefdine.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Today I'll be speaking a bit about the issue of Sharia, and this wasn't my choice. It was some of the brothers had asked me to speak about this issue. I guess they're trying to attack or tackle a number of issues that are being discussed either on campus here or at other campuses or in the news and by the media in general. So I know yesterday was the issue of the Quran and what is the Quran, and today we'll speak about the Sharia, and tomorrow I'm not exactly sure. I think it's about the life of the Prophet ﷺ and so on. So just to give a bit about myself before I begin. My name is Shariah Alsayefdine. I was born in Scarborough, Ontario, and I've lived here since I was in Edmonton since I was about 3 years old. I converted to Islam in my early teens, and I've lived in Edmonton since then. I've lived overseas a little bit as well to study, but other than that, my life has been here. Currently, I have my studies have been in diploma and degree in child and youth care from the Human on the south side, and I just finished my courses in my master's in occupational therapy at U of A. So this is just a little bit about me before I begin speaking. So the first thing I'll speak about the Sharia is that when we discuss this, whether it's someone who isn't Muslim or someone who is coming or has just come to Islam or someone who's just begun practicing Islam, a number of things need to be kept in mind. So one of the things that needs to be kept in mind is if you take information, you need to take it correct information. You can't go on hearsay, or this is how I saw it when I was young, or this is what my dad told me, or this is what I saw on the news, or a friend told me that he knew a guy that was like this, and so on. None of this really benefits anyone, because as we know, the vast majority of information, whether it's what we get from people that we know or from the news, it's filtered through a certain ideology. Whether we want to accept that or not, this is the reality of things. And just to give an example of that, I'll speak about when I was in high school and I was speaking to the guidance counselor, the career counselor about Islam when I was doing some courses in high school. She said that she wasn't accepting of Islam, and she gave the reason as being, and just keep those points that I mentioned in mind as you're hearing her answer or her justification, was that she had heard a story, and keep in mind again that this is someone who's teaching in a high school, so that means they've had education and they're actually in the field of education as well. So if anyone should know about facts and knowing evidences for things, then it should be someone who's someone like this should be at the forefront of that type of group of people. So her response or her explanation was that she had heard a story of a man who's traveling from or to the Middle East. She wasn't clear on that forced or wouldn't accept his wife going on the plane, except that she was above the carrier for the luggage. So this was her bias against Islam. So first of all, you can see from this, there's a number of logical things wrong with this. First of all, what airline would let that happen? Second of all, what person would fit into that thing? Third, what overhead storage would actually hold a person? All these things. So this person had overlooked all of these logical things that if you had told someone this in the street, they would say, you know what, you're just an outright liar, because that's not a thing that's possible to happen. But this person being educated and being in the field of education took that information and decided, well, no, this is enough for me to state that Islam is wrong. Not even looking to the fact that, let's say that actually happened. Does that mean it's from Islam? Can you judge someone from any other religion or any country or any city or you judge that whole area or that whole religion based upon what someone does? Of course not. But this was the way this person chose to look at these things, and they accepted it based on that. And Allah knows best whatever ended up happening with this lady, but obviously this is how she chose to look at things. So, just moving on from there, I'll explain that when it comes to Sharia, it's a very, as the brother mentioned earlier, it's a very large or very popular buzzword. Especially in Canada, they speak about the creep of Sharia, or the Sharia creep, and they'll talk about how Islam is taking over the menus in hospitals, and it's taking over the menus on airplanes, and whether women can vote while wearing a niqab, and how this should be out and out banned, and women shouldn't be allowed to wear these types of veils in public institutions because it goes against the concept of separation of church and state. And this is all eventually, if we look 15, 20 years down the line, Canada won't be any different than any place that they consider to be a backward state in the world. And this is a very easy way to play on people's emotions when they speak about Sharia. Because if someone was to say, well, obviously Sharia was implemented for approximately 1,300 years, and it was one of the largest states that spanned all the way from the Philippines all the way to Spain. So is this something that all it has to do with is keeping women indoors, and all it has to do with is trying to hurt people and trying to make everything backwards? If someone looks at this issue logically, they would understand that no, it couldn't be possible that something that was this important to the world as a whole would only relate to these issues. So we need to understand that Sharia, yes, it has to do, or it enters the judiciary in a Muslim country, and it also enters with the criminal codes and the punishments or the consequences that are implemented on someone who contradicts a law. Yes, this is part of the Sharia, and we don't deny that at all, and it's not allowed for us to deny that. But it also has to do with how husbands deal with their wives and wives deal with their husbands, how children deal with their parents, and the opposite. And it has to do with the economic system of a country, and it's the judiciary system as well. And it has to do with the internal and external affairs of a country in how they deal with each other, whether it's a Muslim or non-Muslim country, and so on. So it isn't simply something that can be summed up in a 2-minute news story in order to scare people away and make people think that this is it's merely some way of trying to take over the world. So this is just kind of a background or a very brief introduction explaining that the Sharia is something that enters the lives of Muslims, whether it's their political lives, their personal lives, and so on. So the next thing to look at is, well, what is the basis or what is the sources of Sharia? As we know, if we said that Sharia in reality is the whole religion of Islam, then we look, well, what is the sources for the religion of Islam? We know that it's the Quran and the Sunnah. And the Quran was spoken about yesterday, which is the literal word of God that was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And the Sunnah, which is the tradition or what was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, not directly from the Word of God, but as a revelation. So this includes his actions, his statements, and the things that he heard or saw that he approved of, and so on. So these are the two main sources of the Sharia, which is the Islamic law or the religion of Islam in general. And after that, the sources are secondary sources, which would include a consensus. So if all of the Muslims agree upon something, then this is considered part of Islam, but then that would go back to the Quran and the Sunnah as well. And likewise, qiyas, or what they call deductive reasoning, so looking at a certain text from the Quran or the Sunnah and deriving a ruling that isn't directly from that text, but would apply to an issue that was indirectly spoken about in the Sharia. So things like this, these are the sources of Islamic law, or Sharia in general. The next thing to speak about is what has the Sharia come with, or what was the goal of the Sharia that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came with, as well as the prophets before him. The scholars are united, or have unanimously agreed upon the fact that there are 5 issues that Islam in its current form, which came with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as well as the forms that came with the prophets before him. There are 5 categories of things that Islam came to preserve. The first is the religion itself. So many of the rulings of Islam, whether it's as a state or in a person's personal life, many of these things have to do with preserving the religion and keeping it the way that it was originally revealed. So some of these things relate to the forbiddance of innovating something in the religion. So if someone comes and says, well, now I accept or I believe that this is part of the religion, this isn't something in Islam that we would accept or would state that is permissible to do. And the reason for this is, if we open up this door, then anyone can come and say, well, no, this is from the religion and this is how I see it. And every person would have a different form of Islam, every country would have a different form of Islam, and so on. So this is one of the ways that Islam has come to preserve the religion itself, and likewise the obligation of following a certain understanding. So just like now, if someone came and said, well, I understand the Quran this way, it's not sufficient for them to use their own intellect and say, well, this is the way it is, and this, because I have understood it this way, this is what Islam as a religion, in the way that it was revealed, that this is the actual religion. No, we have to look at the Quran and the Sunnah, the way they were revealed, the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ explained it, the way his companions understood it and explained it. Because they were the ones who were present as it was being revealed. They were the ones who heard it directly from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and so on. So this is, and again, I apologize that it's not going to be possible to go through all of the examples of all of these five categories and explain them in too much detail, because it's a less than an hour talk. But this is one of the ways that Islam has come to preserve the religion. The next thing that the scholars have agreed upon is that Islam has come to preserve life. So how does Islam do this? First of all, it forbids killing intentionally. It also forbids being neglectful in your day-to-day life that might lead to someone being hurt or killed, whether it's through driving or whether it's the way you build certain things and not following certain codes and being unsafe in general. That Islam has forbidden these types of things. So if someone intentionally kills someone else, except for in certain conditions, then we believe in what the West now calls capital punishment. So this might seem harsh coming from Canada, in which capital punishment has been abolished and it's no longer ever implemented. But one might, when someone looks at this, they're looking, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, they're looking at this through the eyes of what they're currently living. So they see that we're living in a place where this isn't present. So if we say that this is something that should be done, it goes against the way that they're living their life now. But if we look in Canada, especially in Edmonton, if we look, was it last year or the year before, we had the highest per capita murder rate in Canada. And the murder rate last year went up 7% in Canada as a whole. And I'm sure if there's any of you who are taking criminology or corrections, you will have more knowledge on this than I do. So not having this hasn't fixed anything. So people might say, well, how can you then take someone's life because they've taken a life? You've said that they were wrong in taking someone's life, and then now you're doing it the same thing to them. This goes back to one of the fundamentals of Islam, and which the West or which secular societies have tried to implement to some extent, which is what is put forward first, the rights of an individual or the rights of the society as a whole, or the greater good of the society. As we see, and I think unless someone is kidding themselves, they will see that the way things are running now it's not working. Despite the attempt to balance the rights of a person and the rights of the society isn't working. If we look at the number of murders, if we look at the number of deaths due to drinking and driving, if we look at the number of rapes, if we look at the number of home invasions, obviously something is broken. So this idea that, well, it's too harsh, yes, it might be harsh, but it's harsh for a reason which is greater than an individual's rights who has already taken someone else's rights away from a person. So this is the way we look at things. We try to balance between what sure, a person might have individual rights, but is taking someone's life, who's already stepped forth and taken someone else's life, and who's shown that this is something that isn't too much of a problem for them, or they don't see it as being a big deal, is stopping this person and setting an example for society as a whole. Is this something that is more important, or is it more important to say that this person we shouldn't have capital punishment? So this is, and again, like I said, this is, this could be a whole course in and of itself discussing this issue. I'm just trying to give some examples as to why Islam might look like certain rulings in Islam are too harsh, but this is based upon the society that we're living in, and that we've already taken the idea that individual rights are equal to or even greater than rights of the society as a whole. So this is the first issue, or the second category which Islam has come to preserve, which is life. So this is the forbiddance of killing in any of its forms, the punishment for killing, based upon that's based upon what form the killing was in, whether it was intentional or whether it was due to neglect, as well as the rights of a person or their responsibilities toward their self, with regards to what they eat and what they drink, and their medicine or their health care and these types of things. And this is something that Islam has also taken into account. So many of the things that are forbidden in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Sunnah have explained that these are due to them being harmful. Either that they will kill someone, so killing yourself isn't allowed, and likewise taking things that are known to be poisonous to the body are also not allowed. Certain foods that have been forbidden, or eating certain things in excess, have also been forbidden, because even though this might not directly lead to someone's death, overall it affects the person's life and the person's health. And inshallah, if there's any questions about that later on, we can go into it in more detail, but I'll leave it there so I can move on to the next issue. So the next category that Islam has come to preserve is the mind, or the intellect. And one of the main ways that this is seen in Islam is through the forbiddance of intoxicants. So we're living in a society where you can go to any store, or many stores or restaurants or bars or nightclubs and get any essentially any intoxicant that you want. And there's currently a debate on the legalization of marijuana, which is another type of intoxicant, and so on. So when we say this, it might seem impossible for someone to understand how could you forbid all these types of intoxicants, and how can you take this right away if someone wants to use this and they want to get drunk on whatever night of the week, or they want to wake up wherever they wake up because they were drinking the night before, that this is their right, and who are you to then say, well, they can't actually go to the store and buy this? And if you forbid it, then you're opening up a black market, and then it's going to lead to fighting and killing and theft and so on. But again, like I said, this is looking at things through the current state of affairs that we're living in right now. This doesn't affect the original ruling of Islam, that these things are forbidden. So if we look to all of the detriments that have come with intoxicants, whether it's people themselves dying because they were drunk, they were driving, they were drunk, they were out doing something stupid, and they fell off a bridge, they ran in front of a car, whatever else it might be. Or if we look that someone was walking on the sidewalk, or they were driving their car and they're dead now, or their father's dead because someone had the right to intoxicate themselves. Yes, someone might say, well, who are you to take someone's rights away? But again, we look at the greater good. Many things, even in society now, are based upon the greater good. Someone might be a better driver than someone else, but we all have to stop at stop signs. We all have to follow a certain speed limit. This isn't because if anyone in the society went over this limit, all of a sudden everyone would die. This has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the fact that these are certain things that are come to be understood, that people following them will, sure, you've taken my right away to drive a certain speed limit. Or if I want to drive as fast as I want, I should be able to drive as fast as I want. But we see that there's a greater good in forbidding or putting limits on certain things and disallowing or prohibiting things because of the greater good. So this is the issue again with alcohol. If we look at all of the detriments that have come with it, like some of them that I spoke about, or whether it's fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and children who their whole life are affected now because their mother decided to drink while they were in utero, and so on. If we look at each one of these things on their own, a case could be made that this is sufficient to say that these types of things should be forbidden in society as a whole. So how about if we added them all up together and we look at the cost to the healthcare system, whether it's for people's problems with their kidneys or brain damage because they've been drinking all their life, and so on. So this is another thing that Islam has come to preserve, and this preservation of the mind comes obviously through certain things that need to be forbidden, because we know that these are detriments. So this is the third. The fourth is the preservation of wealth. So Islam has come to give everyone the right to their own wealth, as well as to keep everyone's wealth that they do have safe, and to keep it, to stop anyone from transgressing against it, whether it's physically or whether it's through fraud and these types of things. So the first way is the forbiddance of stealing. So the direct stealing from someone else is forbidden, and punishments have been put in place for someone who decides to take someone else's wealth. And again, like I said, someone might say, well, in Islam you say that someone can have their hand cut off because they've stolen from someone else. And who do you think you are to do this to somebody? And maybe this person was hungry, or maybe this person had a bad upbringing, and so on. Again, they're looking at this issue without knowing all the facts. First of all, the theft, if someone was to have their hand cut off, there's a number of things that would have already have to have taken place. First of all, that the thing that they were stealing wasn't needed for their own preservation of themselves or their family. So that would be, that this misconception that people try to spread that, if there's a place where people are poor and they steal something to feed themselves or their family, then all you cut off their hand, and how barbaric is this? This is a complete fallacy. Secondly, it would have to be something that was clearly didn't belong to themselves, and it wasn't just left somewhere. So they actually took something from someone's pocket. They took something from someone's car. They went into someone's house and took something. So there was no misconception that this was something that they just found. They actually had to take steps in going into transgressing against someone else's rights. So again, this balances the rights of society to the rights of a person. So sure, someone might say, well, I just feel like going and taking whatever I want, and who are you to then hurt me? Well, the fact is, this person would have made a clear choice to then transgress against someone else and their rights. So why should anyone in society have to worry that if I'm not diligent 24 hours a day and spend money and time and effort in protecting my property all the time, that at any point someone can take it and then nothing's going to happen to them? Or they'll be sent to do some community service or something like this. Meanwhile, I've been terrorized, my rights have been taken, and so on. So again, this is another matter that balances the rights of the society with taking away a certain right of a person. And again, if we look at the way things are now, and the reason I keep talking about this is because when I was asked to speak about this, one of the topics I was asked to touch upon is the relevance of Sharia to the current state of affairs, or how is it relevant to our days today, or in this era and in this place. So this is the reason why I keep talking about that. It isn't to attack Western society or something like this. It's just speaking about it because I was asked to speak about how is it relevant. So again, this is the fifth point that Islam or the Sharia has come to preserve is lineage or honor. And this is translated differently depending on who's translating it. But the point of it is that everyone, their honor is kept in that everyone knows who their parents are. Everyone, when they have children, it's based upon their own desire. It's not based upon that someone forced them to do so. It isn't based upon things like this where this lineage or this honor is attacked. So how are some of the ways that Islam has come to forbid this? First of all, the forbiddance of extramarital intercourse or extramarital affairs. And again, this is an issue that people might say, well, who are you to, if I want to do this, this is my own decision, and who are you to stop me? The point of it is, if we look again at the harms that come from this, whether it's different diseases or STDs or STIs, depending on how you want to categorize it. The amount of harm that's on the healthcare system because of these types of things. The amount of abortion, the amount of children who end up in group homes or end up in child welfare. All of these types of things, on top of the fact of things like rape and date rape and on and on and on. Prostitution and pornography and so on and so on and so on. Someone might say, well, again, I disagree and I want to go and sleep with whoever I want, whenever I want, as much as I want. Who are you as a society to stop me? The point of it is, as a society, we want to stop you. Why? Not to hurt you yourself, but because, look, we don't want to have to deal with all these problems that your right to sleep with whoever you want, whenever you want, is causing. Why should everyone have to pick up the tab for your bad decisions? This is, again, relates back to the other 4 categories that we talked about. It isn't society's problem. It isn't the people in society's responsibility to take care of everyone else's problems all the time, when it was clearly a bad decision to begin with. This doesn't mean that we don't help people when they need help. No, this is a completely different matter. The point is that by Islam coming to preserve these five categories of rights, or these 5 categories of necessities that humankind needs to have, this is what actually Sharia is in reality. So whether it's in the judiciary system, whether it's the economics and the forbiddance of certain types of sales, or certain types of transactions such as interest or usury, and so on, all of these things revolve around these 5 categories of necessities. So this is what I wanted to say. So I'll open, I know I didn't want to go too deep into things because it would open up and leave too many misconceptions which then need to be explained, and then it would go way beyond the time. So I'd rather make it short and leave the door open for some questions if there is any. That way I can address what any doubts or any misconceptions that you have, instead of speaking too much and then leaving things unclear at the end. So if there's any questions about anything. Yeah.
When you were talking about preservation of life, you said that it's forbidden to potentially kill someone except for certain circumstances.
Right.
What kind of circumstances would that be?
Certain circumstances that would, and there's lots. If we go, because we'd have to go deep into discussing, the international affairs, or how countries deal with countries, and if there's transgression of one country against another, defending of someone's self. The point, or the general time when it would be permissible, is protecting oneself or family, because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is killed defending his wealth, then he's a martyr. So the point of that is that obviously he was killed because he was defending it. So if someone was defending themselves or their home or their family and killed someone in that situation, then this would be permissible, because by this person coming into your home or attacking you, they've already violated your right, and your blood or your life isn't worth less than someone who has made the conscious decision to attack you. So that would be one. Again, like I spoke about, if someone actually murders someone else, then we have the right to, or the family would have the right to decide whether they wanted that person executed as a recompense or as a restitution for that person intentionally killing someone in their family. So these are some of the times when it would be allowed. So it's generally would be to keep the greater order of society. Yeah. Yep.
My question is with regards to interest and Islamic banking. I want to be able to explain the benefits of how the Islamic banking system works, and how having no interest you can still make a profit.
I guess this will go back to looking at, well, what is interest in and of itself? Interest is, we view it as a form of oppression. And what does this mean? It means, how is it just for someone who's in need to go to someone else and say, look, I need some help, whatever, I have nowhere to live, I need to build a house, I can't get my family around, I need to buy a car, we have no money to eat, I need, my kids are dying or whatever, can you lend me some money? And someone says, yes, I have enough, I can lend you, but you being in this state of need, you have to help me out too. So that's the first thing. How is it just for someone who's in need and goes to someone for help that they end up, the person in need has to benefit the one who isn't in need so that they can make a profit. So that's the first thing, is that at its most basic form, interest is a form of oppression. Because if I was able to help you, I wouldn't need this money from you. I'm coming to you because I need help. So how is it just for someone to benefit off the back of someone else who's in need of them? So that's the first issue that we would say, is that whether you get a profit out of it or not, that's a second issue. The first issue is that it's a form of oppression. As for the getting a profit, then this would come if we understand when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, speaking about the Jews who were in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, who rejected the idea of the forbiddance of interest when they said, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى, or that Allah has permitted sales and forbidden interest or forbidden usury. So they equated the two as being the same. So here I can benefit through my money, and here I can benefit through my money. The difference is, here I'm looking at starting a business. I might help someone out and say, here's if you want to start a business, here's some money, pay me back, and then we'll be partners in the business that we've started together. And when you're well off on your feet, you give me back the money that you had. If we want to stay in partners together, then we can. If not, then you go on your way, and may Allah bless you for with what you plan to work. So the point of it is, and I know I'm not being very clear, but the point of it is, if someone wants to help someone and also wants to make money, they can do it in a way that isn't taking the dignity away from the person. And this is very often seen nowadays, when someone might say, I want to start a business, can you lend me some money? They'll lend them the money, and then they'll be partners in the business. Or they'll lend them the money, and then once they're off on their feet, then they give the money back. So this idea that taking advantage of people in need, and the only way to do it is by having them pay you on the money that they've actually taken from you. Not that you start a business with them, or that you become partners in a business, by sharing the wealth and that type of thing. I guess it's not a very good answer, but that's the most basic thing, is that it's two-pronged issue. First is that it's oppression, and second is that just like when people start businesses together, they don't have enough money on their own. They pool their wealth, and then they own the business together, and if one wants to buy out the other when they're done, they do that, and then they're on their way, and one person goes one way and one goes the other way. The same thing would be done in Islam. So I don't know, kind of rambled there, but that's clear. Is there any other questions?
Maybe I have seen it with my sister, I guess. Is it permissible to loan some money for primary residence?
For primary residence?
Yeah, like for them. For example, if I want to live with my family, can I borrow some money from a bank?
Mortgage.
Yeah,
mortgage. Like
mortgage.
The mortgage loan. Then I have to pay interest.
Right.
Like,
the basic ruling is that it wouldn't be allowed, and the reason for that is because, first of all, you're locking yourself into a contract which is based upon